All right, joining us now is Kika Matos, Director of Immigration Rights and Racial Justice at the National Immigration Law Center. Kika, a federal judge actually banned family separations. But now that Homan is talking about possibly reviving this policy, is that even possible? What is your reaction to that sound that you just heard?
It's heartbreaking. It's cruel. It's unnecessary. It has no place in a civilized society, far less a democracy like ours. And here's the thing. The family detention and family separation is all about cruelty for the sake of cruelty. It is not a deterrent.
Right. I mean, it didn't prove effective even after, even when it was in process. It didn't seem to be limiting the numbers of people trying to come across. I'm wondering, what will the legal avenues be for undocumented migrants who could potentially be swept up in these deportations? And should people have a plan? Should they pack a bag? Should they have a lawyer to call? What should people do?
Yeah, it's been heartbreaking since the outcome of the elections. Many immigrant families have been calling immigration advocates. We have been flooded with calls. I've personally been flooded with text calls from families saying, what do I do? Do I need to prepare? Should I leave? And one of the things that we have been doing is encouraging people to put together family preparedness plans. Those include things like families making decisions such as, if I get deported and I have kids, who should be my guardian? Who will look after my children? Who will take care of my property? Who will be the person who's going to be responsible for whatever assets and whatever responsibilities I leave behind? Those are the kinds of heartbreaking conversations that are happening all over the country because of the policies that Trump is threatening to unleash.
I also want to ask you about the type of support you might be seeing or frankly not seeing as we come up on the start of this second term. The New York Times wrote, quote, "Nonprofits are finding that some supporters are not energized by another round of resistance. Instead, they've been left exhausted, wondering whether their donations made any difference. Some are afraid that they could be targeted for retaliation by Mr. Trump and his allies for donating to that group or groups that oppose his administration." Are you noticing that dip in enthusiasm, the exhaustion, the kind of downturn in people thinking that they can make a difference one way or the other?
We noticed it immediately after the elections, but here is what has happened since. People are almost waking up and realizing that they have a role to play, both in defending and fighting for democracy and also for protecting immigrant families. And so what we have seen since the election is an increase in the number of donations, but not just that. People are also reaching out and saying, what can I do to protect my immigrant neighbors? Where do I donate? What are the things that we need to do as a community to prepare for what we anticipate will be one of the worst moments in our nation's history when it comes to what is likely to happen to our immigrant populations?
Given how central this was to Trump's campaign and how he won the popular vote, this is obviously an issue that's resonating with a lot of Americans. And we've heard it from Democrats, too, right? The system just doesn't work. It's unfair to people who stay in line. As you were just talking about, it's inhumane to have these mass family deportations or detentions. So what do you think could be a better approach or a better way to try to work the immigration system for the U.S.?
Yeah, look, the fundamental problem with immigration is that our system is hopelessly broken. And Congress has not had the courage or the grit to move forward with advancing immigration legislation. And just to provide some level of context, the last time we saw comprehensive immigration reform happen by Congress was in 1987. Think about that, right? I believe Reagan was still president. And we just seem to lack the courage of Congress and the courage of people in power to make laws that are get us up to speed, right? We need to create a 21st century system of immigration. That hasn't happened. And so Americans are understandably frustrated. And what they want is a vision for immigration that is implemented, and they want the comfort of knowing that our laws are actually addressing the many systemic problems that we have that have led to so much unhappiness and so much anger on the part of Americans.
And we don't have a ton of time, but really quickly, I just want to ask you, what does it say to you about where we are as a country of immigrants? I mean, I'm third and fourth generation Italian. Almost everyone came here from somewhere else. That immigration is such a contentious issue in the U.S. right now.
It's heartbreaking, but I believe that we have to keep fighting for justice and fighting for immigrant rights. I happen to think that immigration is a movement responsibility. There's a reason we have an immigrant rights movement, and that is because we have a growing coalition of people who are committed to the fight for justice. I really believe that the pendulum will swing the other way. And part of it will be because of the horrors of what we are about to see being unleashed. I think Americans will realize this is not who we are. This is not what we want. And this is antithetical to a nation, like you said, of immigrants, and a nation that believes in democracy and the rule of law and human rights.